If this was really showbiz, you would give me roses. Now would take your hand. Hollywood made it look easy. Why did it have to tease me? I don't understand. I tried to love like in the movies, but all I got was plastic plans. I got something inside me that I wanna confess. Been cutting your ties, and I don't wanna be that. I got something inside me that I.
So this is my series on plant sentience, and firstly, if you couldn't tell from the intro video, we're going to start talking about why animals became sentient in the first place. I know this video series is primarily about plants, but we can't talk about why plants would need to develop sentience without first discussing why we develop sentience. The definition of sentience is the ability to perceive or feel things. As you see from this picture, it talks about how we have thoughts and reflection, that sort of thing. However, that includes microorganisms, not the thoughts and reflection, obviously, but the ability to perceive or feel things, because they can perceive light through eye spots and feel the heat and changes in temperature and pH. Therefore, for the purposes of this video series, I'll consider those beings that can think in the conventional animal sense, feel emotions, and perceive and respond to the world around them as sentient, just like how this picture shows, like anything that has, growth, sensation, and then also can think would be sentient. So this distinction then excludes microorganisms because as far as we know, they cannot feel emotions. As many know, evolutionary characteristics developed not because they were wished about by the being itself, but are rather naturally selected through the fact that the being either did not die as fast as their brethren or was able to produce more offspring. Initially, when multicellular organisms developed into large bodies that had rudimentary processing skills, these were mostly response mechanisms that were coded for in their DNA. These are very basic. If X happens, then we do Y. For example, these organisms would have a chemical change occur around them, which would then kickstart a chain reaction in the cells to do something. If the sun is not here anymore, then we move somewhere else. If we have enough food stored in our body, then we reproduce, that sort of thing. As time progressed, those that were able to respond and process faster lived longer and produced more because they were not being eaten as often. This breeding of higher brain power over time allowed them to evolve to have a special organism for processing, the brain. And so all bodies have a certain biological energy limit, and the need to figure out the best and most efficient way of using our stored energy caused the brain to develop. Our bodies have a set amount of energy to be used, and you spend too much of it on running from predators, then you won't be able to find food to eat. Therefore, higher processing and weighing of decisions in regard to the environment was required. Instead of simple if-then issues, beings developed the need for multi-input, multi-output scenarios. If we're being eaten, but, that's closer to where our food source is, or if the being that is eating us is closer to our food source, to move towards the food with a higher chance of dying, or stay where there's less food. And that really depends on, the people around you and your clan or your population group. This complex processing developed into the brain. The brain developed allostasis, which is the ability to foresee solutions and react beforehand instead of reacting while something was happening. If we hide from a predator instead of running, then we might also live. If we know the predator lives in this area, then we avoid this area if possible. If a rival clan lives in this area, then we set our boundaries and avoid them too. The most complex parts of sentience that I defined above, which is emotions, is also easily explained by science. If you feel care for someone in your clan or family or population, then you should help them survive, and this helps to propagate your species. Everybody wants their own genetic material out into the world. However, if the people in your population group aren't surviving as well, then you won't have anybody to mate with to propagate your own genetic material. So yes, sometimes animals are solitary creatures, but in the end, that's why we develop these groups of people that we traveled around with as like Homo erectus and Homo sapiens. Empathy is just a feeling someone else's emotions mimicked by your brain. This formed connections within a population. It helps to define an us and a them. And while us and them distinctions are not always the best for, the modern world and certain political and cultural group distinctions, they do help to define a set of boundaries within a population group and within a species. Basically, we develop thinking, sentience, and the brain in order to bond with each other and to ensure our own survival. Since this is the background video for the series, it will remain rather short, but thank you for tuning in, and I hope you'll watch the next video on why plants would develop sentience and what that process would look like for them.